We have a talk from our founder at Vegan Camp Out right now. So please give a warm welcome to Jordan Martin.
Cancel culture kills. A bold opening to a talk, but a true one nonetheless. I'm Jordan, the founder of Vegan Camp Out, and apologies to anyone who thought this would be a talk purely about the festival and our history, but I want to speak about a topic very close to my heart. That topic, unfortunately, is cancel culture. Whilst I wish it wasn't and wasn't a thing, but I want to use my platform to promote a potential solution to this insidious poison. I'm going to be reading this from my laptop, as it's a hell of a lot easier than having to attempt to remember it. I do ask that you don't record this talk. The odd clip is fine, but nothing more, please. So, what is cancel culture? I describe it as a form of mob mentality and bullying that sets out to try and embarrass, deplatform, or completely silence an individual based on something they said that upset or offended a particular person or group. Whilst it may be a new term, it's not a new concept. It just happens much more often now and has the ability to go viral much quicker thanks to the internet, and seems to happen over the most trivial things. Cancel culture is simply a new form of something that's always existed, which is bullying. Very few people would claim that bullying or mob mentality are good things, but cancel culture just isn't taken as seriously, despite it always being one of these two things, or usually both. And that needs to change. Cancel culture should carry serious legal consequences akin to a hate crime, for that's the only reason it's been able to flourish as much as it has, because there's little to no consequence. Many see it as a form of what we generally refer to as wokeism, a term that traditionally meant good, and like all good things that start out positive, this has also come to possess many negative traits and darker sides as well. And the woke part of cancel culture is only one branch. There are many so-called anti-woke people who are just as involved in cancel culture. This talk isn't going to be particularly political, which is a hard phrase to say. It's not going to be about the history or beginnings of cancel culture, and I'm not even going to speak about why people really engage in it, which could be a whole talk in itself and can include many potential factors such as jealousy, entitlement, mental health issues, groupthink, fear, and the desire to fit in with the mob. Instead, this talk is merely some of my personal thoughts and experiences with it, along with what we can all do about it. I wouldn't even claim that cancel culture is never appropriate, because in certain drastic situations where people are at risk of harm and authorities aren't doing anything, then cancel culture may be an important last resort tool to prevent suffering. But unfortunately, that is rarely how it's used. So what drives me to be passionate about this subject? My dad killed himself 5 years ago, so mental health is something very close to home, as well as personally suffering with it for a large majority of my life. Being autistic, it's always made me recognize that people around me are different. I understand how it is to think outside the box and be interested in different outlooks on life. I've always had such a drive for peace too. I've never been in a fight, fucked someone over, or even slammed a door. And them two things, a respect for diversity and skepticism, and promoting societal harmony, is the core behind much of what drives me to do this talk and why I'm so opposed to cancel culture, which is very often the opposite of them two things. I've always kept myself to myself, which is why it's still so weird to have a platform. But I've also always been outspoken about what I thought was right and always cared about what was true, rather than what might be the right thing to say. But that pursuit of truth also brings consequences, which I'm going to speak about today. I do want to say that not everything I'm going to say is going to apply in all cases or circumstances. Context, as always, is important, in fact, vital, and could almost be viewed as the antithesis to cancel culture. With an appreciation for context, cancel culture would in most cases be eliminated. I also want to make it clear that cancel culture doesn't really have anything to do with veganism in principle, but like all social justice causes, veganism too is riddled with it like a plague. My story just so happens to have happened as a result of my position in the vegan community, but could have easily happened within any social justice movement, and so it isn't specific to our community. Me being so heavily involved in the vegan scene is merely the tool that allowed me to become subjected to it. So, example 1. The far left form of cancel culture, and maybe the most popular form, and my first real taste of it. I'm an autistic, ex-Muslim person of color who was brought up working class. I tick all the boxes the far left would usually love you for. But this is a story of what happens when you have your own opinions and the treatment many will receive as punishment. I was brought up culturally Muslim because of my dad, and so identified as Muslim for much of my life for that reason. I was never particularly religious either way, but identified as such. It's not something I really spoke about at school, yet was called bummer on a daily basis by both students and even sometimes teachers. When I was older and started researching religion, I soon became an atheist, and in many ways an anti-theist, especially with regards to how religions, particularly Islam, treated women and gay people. And so I became more vocal about the human rights abuses I was seeing from that side of my community. I would sometimes speak about topics such as grooming gangs and the cover-up of tens of thousands of English children raped by predominantly Pakistani and Bangladeshi Muslim gangs, a crime where 84% of the perpetrators are Muslim men, despite only making up 2% of the English population. Grooming gangs is an interesting one because not only could you be cancelled for speaking about the ignored abuse of children, but you could say that the grooming gang scandal itself was due to the effects of cancel culture, because this had been going on for decades, and still is, and the police, MPs, councils all knew it was going on, but they didn't say or do anything about it because they didn't want to get called racist. Even the abuse of children wasn't enough to risk ruining their own lives, careers, and families for. The exact same reason people don't dare speak the truth today. The fear to be ourselves due to backlash or risk to our safety is even more disturbing when it results in the literal severe abuse or even death of people. And so this was allowed to go on for many decades with almost zero consequences or convictions. Many of these children were also killed, which is one of the many reasons the opening line to this talk wasn't merely hyperbolic. I'd also talk about how almost all of the countries in the world that you can be killed for being gay are Muslim, how 52% of British Muslims believe you should be criminally prosecuted for being gay, compared to just 5% of the non-Muslim UK population, the horrors of FGM, terrorism like ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and Boko Haram, and also about the punishment for apostasy, i.e. leaving the religion, which is often death. But you could always generally speak about these things in the UK with no backlash, except from maybe religious extremists themselves. A lot of people can't believe when I tell them that before 2016, speaking about these topics were very much seen as a liberal thing, speaking out against homophobia, sexism, extremism, and so forth. But come 2016, that all seemed to rapidly change. 2016 is when I started Vegan Camp Out, and at the start, nothing was said, because as some of you may know, the first event was only 400 people. But by the time we launched the first big Vegan Camp Out at the end of 2016 for the 2017 event, that is when I received my first real dose of cancel culture. One individual started commenting on all of our posts, getting all of their friends to join in, and posting to every vegan Facebook group they could that I was a racist, an Islamophobe, far-right, fascist, a neo-Nazi sympathizer, and even worse names. I remember specifically one person that shared one of the posts saying, "Please do not support this white supremacist." I messaged her and said, "If you took one look at my photos, you would see I'm not even white." To which she replied, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize, I'll remove the post," as if being white would have made that okay. Racism. I had no idea what was happening. I was completely stunned. Bear in mind, I hadn't spoken much about religion for years by that point. I had worked on announcing this big project for months, and at that point, it had been the biggest and riskiest event I had ever put on. I was honestly shocked and thought I could lose everything I had worked on. In late 16, we didn't have the following or the funding that we have now. I had to pull out of events I was due to speak at about Vegan Camp Out because the organizers couldn't guarantee my safety from certain extremist political groups. Many people saw these posts, but the leader behind it was just one person, as it usually is. There's usually a ringleader, and they are the truly evil ones, as opposed to the people that blindly follow and support them who don't have such sinister intentions. This person would post statuses about me on a daily basis and truly became obsessed. Strangers on the internet told this person's employer about what they were doing, which got them fired, which then was used as an additional reason to attack me because they accused me of being the reason that this person was unemployed, which it wasn't, and their employer even confirmed this. I'd never approve of something like that. The people who rejoice when someone gets fired from their job is them, not me. It got so bad that I had to get the police involved. They were arrested and interviewed and said no comment to everything, but were ultimately let go. The reason being that Facebook didn't want to give the police what they needed, and without it, the police said this person could have just said they were hacked, and it wasn't them that posted the statuses. The only thing victims of cancel culture usually have to protect themselves is civil law, which very few people know anything about, and if they do bother to learn, may not have the funds to actually be able to take it to court or want to take that risk. And so in the majority of cases, they just let it go, earning another victory for the cancer that is cancel culture. But fortunately, after the police got involved, this individual never posted about me or Vegan Camp Out again, and basically disappeared from the vegan community altogether. But these false accusations were already out there now, shared by hundreds and seen by thousands, and this was only the beginning. Nothing I ever said came from a hateful place and was never against individual people or even their religion, but against ideology and dogma itself and the human rights abuses that are caused as a result of such faith-based thinking. Religions are merely ideas, and it's your right to speak about or criticize any idea you want. People have rights, ideas do not. The idea that speaking out against Islamic extremism or homophobia or sexism was racist would be like saying that calling white people out on their homophobia or sexism is also racist. It makes zero sense. This belief was held by many on the far left for many years, that if you spoke about racism or sexism that white people had committed, then not only is it okay, but it's to be rewarded and respected. Whereas speaking about racism or sexism committed by non-white people was completely forbidden, even if you were non-white yourself. Being an ex-Muslim is a very dangerous and vulnerable state of being. Being ex-Muslim can literally put you to death in about 15 countries for being an apostate, or at least receive violent threats from people all over the world. The far right don't like you because you're brown, and the far left would attempt to cancel you, call you a racist, or inadvertently side with the religious extremists. I haven't really spoken about this publicly until now, as I couldn't. For many years, even being non-white yourself meant you could face huge consequences for saying things people didn't like. But then in 2020, all of that seemed to change. It went from everyone can be racist and it's fair game to be attacked to white people should shut up and listen to people of color in basically every circumstance. Now I can speak and not automatically be attacked. You speak to people and they give you a look of sympathy because they think whatever you say is automatically more valid or important than anything they could ever say, which isn't something I agree with even slightly, but it has allowed me to finally be able to speak freely and be listened to without judgment for the first time in many years. But it's for the wrong reasons. It makes me so angry. When will people finally realize that everyone has the right to their opinion, which is valid no matter the color of your skin? So it's important to note here that had I have been white, I would have experienced much more hate and abuse than I have, as that's one less label to throw against me, and so one I had the privilege of not having to endure. In left-wing circles, the first thing that is used against you by proponents of cancel culture is your race. So that's something you get to avoid by not being white. To the point Vegan Camp Out probably wouldn't have been able to survive had my skin pigmentation been less dark. Being white in 2023 is something that's all too often used as a slur against people. My, how Martin Luther King would be rolling in his grave. There is absolutely non-white privilege. The privilege I have as a person of color to stand here and tell my story is not something a white person really has in the same way in 2023. And so I'm using that privilege in order to stand up for those that can't speak openly, as people will listen to me because of the color of my skin, which is wrong, of course, but the reality of the world we currently live in. I can now say the truth about my feelings, thoughts, what I like, who I'm friends with, what I've read, and who I follow more than others can, just based on my race, and that's totally wrong. All racism needs to be called out, a statement that only those of us who aren't white are able to say and still keep our careers. When these people claim that there's no such thing as reverse racism, they are correct, because it's just called racism. As a kid, I hated being brown, but now it gives me a shield to be able to be myself without facing much of what I otherwise would. But even though things are certainly getting better now, they still want to control us. There's already been people calling for this talk not to happen. See, talks like this scare them because they realize people may have woken up and then they may lose their tight grip that they have over the minds of people. You should always be wary when someone doesn't want someone else to be able to speak their mind or tell their story. But it's also ironic and funny, as these are the exact people who state you should never step in the way of a person you should never step in the way of a person of color or minority's lived experiences, or try to silence or talk over them. And so, this is my lived experience. These people claim that they care about minorities, but what they really mean is they care about minorities that think like them and will empower them. These narcissistic bullies actually put our safety and status in great danger as ethnic minority dissidents. They want us left with nothing on the floor begging for forgiveness. Another criticism these people rail against us is diversity, which again is so funny that it's mostly white people who tell us, a company ran by me and my sister, so a disabled person of color and a woman of color, to be more diverse. It makes them so angry that I refuse to book anyone based on their race, sexuality, or gender. The leaders of this cult want me to believe that as a person of color, I will experience constant hate, racism, discrimination, and that even my life in general is at constant risk. But nothing could be further from the truth. In reality, the hate and attacks have only come from them, for daring to be my own person who thinks for myself and refuses to act like a person of color should. Which in itself is such a racist idea, to think that people of a certain skin color should act or think in a particular way. Not once have I ever experienced any racist comment for being brown from anyone in the vegan community or left-wing circles. But yet I see people attacked and mocked for being white several times a week, and have had several people make anti-white comments against me until they realized I was brown. Many have suggested that's why they have such a hatred against Vegan Camp Out, because they couldn't control this person of color. I am free and speak for no one but myself. They hate to see us continue to show up on their social media feeds each year, which makes them feel unachieved in their mission for control and therefore inadequate. Only a small minority are the leaders of this movement. The rest of us are the silent majority, too scared to say anything. But as of today, we have the ability to start standing up to these people and thinking for ourselves. Okay, example 2. Skip to 2019, the now infamous Sabs scandal. I want to start by saying, even though it should be clear, that nothing I'm about to say is against Foxers personally. We love you, nor is it even against the individual people who work to save them. That's respected by everyone in this room, I would imagine. But this is just the truth about what happened, which many people don't know. So in 2019, Vegan Camp Out had established quite a name for ourselves by this point, and had way more eyes on us. We were getting a lot of attacks by farming or pro-hunting organizations like the Countryside Alliance, even down to major news publications doing articles about it. The venue we were at the time was also getting a lot of hate and having sponsors pull out of the venue due to everything that was happening. So an ultimatum was put to us to either cancel the Sabs involvement just for that year, as it was their inclusion that was causing the most controversy, or not be able to use the venue to host our event, which we wouldn't have been able to find a replacement venue with such short notice. And so we made the decision that almost anyone else would for the event to go ahead. Whilst a frustrating and unfortunate situation either way, this was an easy decision for us, because the event not going ahead would have meant dozens of organizations not being able to promote themselves, dozens of businesses losing revenue, many people without a job, and of course thousands of people from all around the world not being able to come. So then we had to explain this situation to the Sabs. Now, what most people don't realize, because they only saw one narrative, is that there were 2 Sab groups involved with the event. One that was going to be doing a talk, and one that was going to be doing a stall. We first told the one that was going to be doing a talk, and they couldn't have been more supportive. They understood completely and were sympathetic to the situation we found ourselves in. So we thought we'd have a similar experience when telling the other group, which we couldn't have been more wrong on. Despite explaining the situation very respectfully to them, we were instantly met with hostility and even threats, with the person telling us that we should have cancelled the event and we had just made a huge mistake and we were about to see what would happen. The entitlement astounded me. We tried to smooth it over with them and calm them down, but they weren't having it. We didn't think too much of it, and then a few days later, out of nowhere, it went viral. First a few messages, then a few hundred, then in a matter of days, thousands. What seemed the whole of Vegan UK Facebook sharing a post that we had banned Hunt Sabs from the event, which wasn't true, and calling for a complete vegan boycott of Vegan Campout. Most of the individual Hunt Sab UK divisions then started doing their own posts, stated that if people supported the Hunt Sabs, they wouldn't support Vegan Campout and should donate the price of a ticket to support them instead. And so it just became known that we were anti-Hunt Sabs, despite this not being the case, and having Hunt Sabs on our own team, who couldn't themselves believe what was happening, because they knew our intentions were innocent and non-ill intended. Or we were accused of being made by the Countryside Alliance not to have them, which also wasn't true. We never had and still haven't ever spoken to them. Why would we have? We're the opposite of everything they stand for, which is why they had such a vengeance against our event in the first place. What people didn't know is that we had already been speaking with the venue to try and get this decision overturned, but all of this backlash certainly made that even more of an urgency. It really became apparent how real this was when only a few days after the scandal went viral, I was surrounded by Hunt Sabs at a music festival and almost physically assaulted until they were kicked out by security. This was the biggest scale attack I'd ever experienced, threats of people saying, "Just wait until we see you in person." Just 4 weeks later, we were able to get this fixed with the venue, and the Hunt Sabs were once again allowed to have their stall back at the event. What they didn't tell you is that we messaged the official Hunt Sabs Facebook page to let them know that we had sorted things and we were going to do a post to let people know. They said they wouldn't believe us until the post was done. So we did the post, and yet shortly after, they still did a post from the main Hunt Sab Facebook page itself saying that they weren't allowed to have a stall at Vegan Campout, which is a post people still reference as some statement of fact. Yet people don't know that it was them who decided not to come and not us. We were shocked by their decision to knowingly lie to thousands of people, despite knowing the truth, and wanted to find out what was going on. We were able to get a phone call with the then chairman of the Hunt Sabs. We said to him, we couldn't understand why they wouldn't want to come to the event, forget about the drama and earn extra revenue to fund their work in saving foxes, which surely must be the #1 goal of their organisation, right? So we were taken back when he admitted to us that that was actually the second goal of their organisation, with the first being to keep the peace within the different divisions. We were eventually able to find several Hunt Sab groups that did want to have a stall at the event, but ultimately they weren't allowed to by the HSA and risked losing funding or support if they came. And so still to this day, people believe that Hunt Sabs are banned from our event, which isn't true, and they weren't ever banned. However, there was a short 4-week period where they couldn't have their stall, some 4 years ago now. But what people don't tell you or don't know is that through that whole debacle, many Hunt Sabs were privately messaging us saying that they supported us and were sickened by the behaviour of many of their fellow Sabs, but they couldn't say anything without risking losing their respect or membership themselves. Many Hunt Sabs wanted to come to the event as punters, but couldn't due to risking ostracisation. This is how mob mentality works and thrives. People have to pretend to act a certain way or think certain things as a protection mechanism. This happens often in all social justice movements where a certain group of thought will speak on behalf of everyone else and claim that they all think like them, and everyone else is too scared to publicly say otherwise. After all this happened in 2019, we had a pretty good few years until we moved venue to Stanford Hall for 2022. Now, for the first 6 months of us announcing that we'd be at this venue, everything was fine. Despite us never having claimed that they were a vegan venue, and instead they were a venue predominantly for events and weddings. In fact, we even persuaded the venue to ban the local fox hunt from using their land. Then 6 months later, the Countryside Alliance yet again popped their head in, 3 years on, and once again persuaded major news publications to do articles against us, calling us a hypocrite for being a non-vegan venue, which also hosted non-vegan events such as pheasant shooting. We found this claim laughable, as had most vegans prior to that, and we expected vegans to either ignore it or be on our side in the ridiculous standard that your venue must also only host vegan-friendly events for you to host your vegan event there. A standard no other major vegan event had held itself to or was expected to. So suddenly, again out of nowhere, the story went viral amongst the vegan community by a very small number of individuals connected to the Hunt Sabs who very much saw this as an opportunity for revenge. Once again, the shares went from dozens to hundreds to thousands in a very short matter of time. Now, this time, there were many people defending us against the ridiculous notion that your landlord must only host vegan events for you to be there. But they were being met with huge attacks themselves and were being called fake vegans if they still attended the event or supported us, which made a lot of vegans fall out between themselves, which was horrible to see. Of course, however, it was us getting attacked the most. I personally was waking up every day to several memes of me with my head superimposed on photos of shooters holding dead birds with people calling me the most awful names. It's important to know that not only did Vegan Camp Out have nothing to do with these activities, but these activities weren't even carried out by the venue themselves. They just rented their land to these groups. Almost every wedding vegans have ever attended has been held at an estate which allows shooters or hunters to rent their land. And more to the point, almost every vegan event vegans have ever attended has been held at a venue that hosts events throughout the rest of the year that profits from the abuse or death of animals. But yet Vegan Camp Out were once again being targeted and held to a ridiculous and unreasonable standard. Many people were claiming by us being there, a part of the ticket money funded these activities, which was completely untrue, as we paid the venue to be there, just like these other groups paid the venue to be there. Our money did not go to them any more than their rent money came to us. As a popular vegan friend of mine said, you would also have to wrongly claim that Vegan Camp Out funded the weddings that were held there as well. In fact, there was an argument to be made that by us and other events being there, it actually reduced the need for these estates to have to take money from shooting groups, because these estates are often given so much money to use their land that it makes it hard for them to turn it down. A certain small group of about 30 people became truly obsessed with me. They were trying to find out everything about me and Vegan Camp Out that they could. They questioned my vegan card by zooming in on pictures of me and wrongly stating my shoes weren't vegan. They were demanding that I posted my tax returns. It was so strange to have a group of middle-aged women so interested in your life and making up daily conspiracies about you, but also pretty worrying and pathetic. Whenever someone needs to make up lies to put their point across, it's probably because they don't have a point that holds any weight to begin with. The ringleaders of these campaigns are usually very unhappy people more often than not, with severe mental health illnesses. Whilst this is sad and absolutely not to be mocked, they are not of sound mind and so should not be listened to by the masses. Another event was set up which was basically promoted by these people as the ethical alternative to Vegan Camp Out and a real Vegan Camp Out. The irony is, this alternative event was held at a venue with fishing lakes and tournaments, and then moved to a venue owned by an organic turkey farm before shortly disbanding. You literally couldn't make it up. This example, just like the previous example, is vegan-specific cancel culture, which is way bigger than me or Vegan Camp Out. This community is unfortunately full of people trying to out-vegan each other and take away other people's vegan credentials. In that sense, that element is similar to that of a cult. Veganism to me is about doing your best and taking practical actions to reduce the suffering that we cause to non-human animals. No one is 100% vegan, which means all of us still cause harm and have different opinions on what can class as vegan or not. I'm yet to meet two vegans that agree on everything. It's a scale. We're all on a different line, every single one of us. And the sooner we realize that, the sooner we can put all of our efforts into trying to reduce the vast amount of suffering that animals are going through at the hands of humans. Rather than personal differences and wanting to kick vegans out for being apostates or sinners or for having a different opinion than ourselves. How can we ever expect droves of new people to join our movement when we treat each other like this? 99% of all the people that have ever attacked Vegan Camp Out, or me personally, have never even spoken to me, never mind known me. And the majority have never been to the festival. But we don't want people like them bringing such toxicity to this event. I truly believe this event is one of the most magical and beautiful places on earth, and we need to keep it that way. Okay, last and final example. Just to give it another example that only happened just a few weeks ago, you may have seen that we posted a photo of all the countries coming to Vegan Camp Out, which got a lot of support. The next day, it must have been shared in an anti-Israeli group as the post got flooded with comments saying how disgusting it is that we would include Israel on the list and that Israeli people should be banned from attending the event. Many comments even saying we were as bad as those involved in war crimes for not banning a nationality/race of people from attending the event. This is the level we're at when it comes to respectful and civil discourse. These people weren't even vegan, but the idea that we would ever ban a particular nationality, ethnicity, or religion from attending the event is everything we're against. Individual people cannot be blamed for the actions of their government, which I'd like to hope is a view most people hold also. As an autistic person who has struggled with mental health for most of my life and have always worried about what people think about me, dealing with all of this has been a lot, to say the least. People share or post things without thinking about the people on the other end or what could happen to them, whether it results in someone actually taking their own life or someone's safety being put at risk. Even if people are able to get through it, it's still taking a huge toll on their mental health and self-esteem, which can have dire consequences on the overall quality of their life. Entitlement mixed with often poor mental health is at the heart of cancel culture. Demanding someone apologize, or worse, delete an opinion or thought they've posted on their own page, which, especially if it wasn't aimed at a specific individual person, which someone else saw, didn't like, and was offended by, is such a strange and controlling demand. Despite all of this, many claim cancel culture doesn't even exist. Saying it doesn't exist is such a slap in the face and the ultimate gaslight of victims, like a white supremacist who denies the existence of racism. There's many dozens more examples I could go into from over the years, but I don't just want to talk about the problem, I want to offer solutions. Telling you my story today isn't to get sympathy. I'm all right, I got through it, but that doesn't make it okay. And not everyone is as lucky or as strong as me either. And this talk started by saying, cancel culture kills. We need to put an end to it, which starts with all of you. So what can we do? These are some values I've really stood by for the last 7 years, having been a victim of it firsthand. If you have an issue with someone, message them directly to speak about it, rather than publicly putting them on blast. Don't join in online hate campaigns, which even includes liking a post which is mocking someone. Don't share people's private messages publicly. This isn't consensual and is a huge abuse of their right to privacy. Ask yourself, who is sharing this? Why are they sharing it? What is it they're posting? Who or what could this help by you sharing it as well? And have you considered what the possible consequences could be? Stop ending close and genuine friendships over a difference in politics. BLM divided us, COVID divided us. We need unity now more than ever. Always read both sides of a story in depth before jumping to conclusions. Don't believe everything someone tells you without seeing strong evidence for it for yourself first. And most importantly, call other people out who are engaging in these toxic and divisive behaviors. Ignoring them facilitates them being able to continue without any opposition. The fact people cannot speak freely or worse, talk about facts without fear of having their social life impacted or even a physical threat to their safety is a grave travesty. Don't ever let anyone take your voice away. Your free speech trumps any personal feelings people may individually hold. It's something we must fight and demand to protect. No one has the right not to be offended, nor should they. Offense is taken, not given, and the quicker people understand that, the better. We need to do better or it will continue to get worse like it has been getting year on year. With 3 on-stage attacks in the past year alone, from Chris Rock to Dave Chappelle and Salman Rushdie. And for those of you who remain unconvinced, that's fine, I guess, but how long is it until they come for you and you're on the receiving end, wishing that people would hear you out and not jump to conclusions and would consider your feelings in this? Some people predict all of this will end in the next 5 to 10 years anyway, but we can work on joining together to try and end it sooner than that if we want, before more lives are given the chance to be ruined. Together we can cancel the one thing that truly does deserve to be cancelled, which is cancel culture itself. Thank you for listening to my talk, and even more for coming to and supporting Vegan Camp Out.